Hi, I'm Paul Winter. I want to put something over on the net today which has occurred in the last week or so with me. I live in Thailand and I'm kind of semi-retired. I suppose one never retires. I live in a very pleasant part of Thailand and I just look after my organic garden, as you can probably see here behind me. I hope so. I'm dealing in certain markets. My main market is developing security-based systems for radio technology, where you have certain requirements. I'll go in my office because it's a bit windy. Where you have certain requirements to screen devices from signals coming in and going out, that sort of thing. That's EMC, protection, EWW, all that sort of thing. I'm going to go in my office. So, about 2 weeks ago, I had a job to do for some clients where they hired me to give them some advice on some emerging technologies. And they were forming a symposium which was running most of it over the net, but some of it in Bangkok. And the technology that they were very interested in was artificial intelligence. So I'm no expert on artificial intelligence, and I sort of did a bit of research and came up with some ideas about some companies which would be very useful for funding them. And I advise on investments at a top level, and I have done this before. Over the years that I've been active, I've done computer manufacturing, cable television financing, media production, and over the last 25 years, I guess I've done nothing but military systems, communication systems, meteorological systems, which are one of my specialities. So it's way outside the field of AI, although I use a bit of AI, ChatGPT, to do research on things. So I got in with this group and we had a sort of bit of a thrashing session for about 1 hour, 1.5, 2 hours. And on the Chinese side, I can't say anything about it because I'm under NDAs, but on the Chinese side, they had some people who are very, very plugged into various aspects of Chinese artificial intelligence models, and they had practical experience in it and were running some models. So the investors were saying, yeah, well, this is pretty interesting, and how can we invest? And, what future do we have in AI? Is it all suddenly going to collapse? Are there inherent problems in the way it's scaling? Things like that. So the conversation carried on getting interesting. And the Chinese guys started to come up with some ideas working on. And basically, I made a few notes and drew a few primitive diagrams. And what they were putting forward reminded me of when I worked for American Express when I was just 1978 in Brighton. I used to live in Brighton, and I was helping to implement networks across great distances, telecommunications networks, which slow speed telex traffic and point of sale terminals, and card readers and all that kind of crap. But that was in the early 70s, 80s. And we had centralized computers and we had distributed networks and connectivity with very slow, well, they were fast then, but very slow modems, all that sort of thing. So I've got a lot of thinking about networks because I had to do a whole load of planning. So anyway, by the by, so what suddenly started to floor me was the concept that the Chinese were coming up with. So if I run through these handmade primitive slides, if we look back at 1978, in the middle you've obviously got a thing like an IBM mainframe or DEC or something chugging away. And then all those little points of terminals, of course, that sort of have slow speed teletype access to the main machine. And they connect to other nodes, like we had nodes all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, and all the way over to Hong Kong and places like that. So it was a very early network where you could address certain points. This is way before the internet protocol came into existence. It was probably being worked on then, but we didn't have any use of it. So you have this basic concept in 1978 of the central computer and remote terminals. So I'll put that in one place over here. Well, as things developed, for example, in 1991, I won a cable television franchise and got American investors in from different parts of America, and eventually sold my television franchise, television and broadband telephone franchise, to NYNEX, who then sold it to Cable and Wireless, and who then sold it to a whole bunch of people, and I think it's ended up in the hands of Virgin. And this, again, predated any form of connectivity between the shelves of the individual franchise along the coast and up to London. But it was a pretty good idea about the way things were going, so we had a lot of connectivity. So by 1999, the internet and the internet protocols had come into existence, in fact, before that, and we were using data traffic like we use now. So these are the representations of the little isolated computers who can or cannot talk to each other, and it's becoming a kind of a grid, and you've still got connections and things. These are very crude diagrams, but I'm sure anybody watching this knows what I'm on about. And then by 2025, we're now having enormous, power-hungry, resource-hungry, in every aspect, virtual data centers which are processing AI. And then, again, this is beginning to look like the original IBM mainframe in the middle with a whole bunch of terminals external to it. And this is a very crude representation, but it mimics the idea that one has a bit of centralized computing with all the resources funneled into that under control of one company or one organization or one country. And all the remote nodes are channeled through it, and obviously the AI is learning from all these nodes and distributing results back to them in the way that we're familiar with. But the Chinese have now, apparently, from what they were trying to tell me in this very basic meeting, was they are developing, for example, a damage-resistant distributed network of everybody in China's computer. That's the theory that they want to get to, where every element in that network, the PCs, have one part of the AI system for the LLM running on it. And they all interconnect and communicate over faster networks. And obviously, the network speed is one of the limits of it. But the theory behind it is that if you have a data center, you can blow a hole in it. So this has obviously got a military application. If there's a data center, you can blow a hole in it quite easily and then stop it functioning by using one weapon. But in the mesh network idea, the global mesh network that these Chinese guys have started to develop, and in fact, apparently they've got it running, is that every PC is part of the network modeling the neural nets and all the interconnectivity, which is quite extraordinary. And they're saying that if you divide it down into the resources that are present on the internet, personal computer resources, with cards, with plug-in graphics cards, and that's, I think, probably why the Chinese are really hungry to get hold of graphics card technology. So you have this enormous capability, absolutely enormous capability, over the whole of China or the planet or wherever these things connect, with the agents or whatever they call them running in each individual PC. So that would actually go back to modeling the way that the network has developed over the period of time. So let me just try and get my phone. I haven't had a shave this morning. So I was quite enthralled by this idea, and I didn't sort of make any commercial advantages out of knowing anything about it, and it was sort of privy to me in an NDA conversation between a bunch of key investors who are coming into Thailand because they're a bit scared of things at the moment, I guess, probably even more so. And I sort of thought, my God, you know, I'm as a joke, I mean, I'm glad I've got replacement socks. Here's a big bag of socks, because I go through a lot of socks for some reason. I thought, well, you know, if if this actually becomes a fact, then it solves a lot of problems. It solves power problems. It solves redundancy and failure problems, because there wouldn't be any single points of failure or main failures going into a branch point. Like we always used to worry about our networks going to London being severed, and often they did, because it was just one single private wire circuit with 9600 baud of data on it. And so as the interconnectivity works using the internet protocols, this could actually work. It might be a very slow AI system, and it might have distribution problems which would require somewhat centralized nodes, probably for control or monitoring, as well as storage of data. But the general theory, which I sort of looked up on ChatGPT and saw what ChatGPT thought about it, and they came up with, ChatGPT came up with kind of figures relating to how many computers you need to do this, that, and the other. And of course, I mean, we are completely surrounded by high performance PCs now. We have very fast fiber plus internet connectivity. And we have lots of sophisticated protocols, and including encryption and data security. So it would seem that what seemed a fantastic idea of sort of connecting everything together with every single computer acting as a part of the main kind of brain idea. The Chinese, I assume the governments behind them, have thought to be the way to go in the future, because it overcomes a lot of basic problems. Power, single failure point, reliability. Just think about it. I do from an engineering standpoint, because I've been engineering for donkey's years, and I just think, hey, that's modelling what happened to us in the late 70s and 80s. So I thought I'd probably better record this and stick it on the internet, because it's such a nice day here, and I'm not going to spoil it by worrying about things. In fact, it's 35C. I'm cooking, and I've been working all morning, so I'm feeling a bit tired. So I'm going off down the sea, which is only 1.5 kilometres from where I live, and I'm going to hum it over. Well, I hope that's of interest to anybody who actually picks up on this thing. If you find it interesting, can you sort of like and subscribe? My channel mainly is to do with music. A long time ago, I used to work in music, and I do something called Sahaja Yoga. So, and I also invest in building work, and I've got friends doing building work and things. I'm quite diverse, but I'm 74, as I said. So I don't know where these people are based. I don't know much about their background, so I can't tell you much more than this, but I thought I'd better put this on the net because it seems very interesting. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.